I want you to imagine a heist for a second. We are talking about a massive, complex operation. $300 million in shareholder value vanishes.
Into thin air.
Gone. And, your mind immediately goes to a Hollywood movie plot.
Right, you're picturing hackers, maybe a tunnel under a vault, something dramatic.
Exactly, Ocean's 11. But here's the twist in this story. There were no robbers. There were no hackers, no explosions. The weapon that destroyed that $300 million was, believe it or not, a math error.
A grade reconciliation error, to be precise, which I'll admit is a lot less cinematic than a bank robbery, but as we'll see, it was way more destructive.
And that's what we're doing our deep dive on today, the story of Dacian Gold and their Mount Morgan's project. But before we get into the weeds, I want to be really clear about our mission here.
Yes, and this is so important.
We are not here to point fingers or assign blame to the specific people at Dacian.
Absolutely not. The goal isn't to say, look what they did wrong. The goal is to use this as a textbook case study.
Right.
We want to understand the physics of failure in mining.
The physics of failure. I like that.
Because the scary part isn't that this happened to one company. The scary part is that it's common. Industry studies show over 60% of new mines experience this, a negative grade reconciliation, in their first 18 months.
Wait, 60%?
60.
That's not an outlier. That's basically a coin flip, or worse.
It's a systemic risk. And that's why this matters. We're going to unpack how a tiny percentage error, just a few decimal points in a computer model, can cause a total corporate collapse.
Okay, so let's get into it. Set the scene for us. Where does the story really begin?
It starts about 3 months into commercial production. The team at Dacian Gold, they're probably feeling pretty good. The mine is built, the plant is humming.
The hard part is over, they think.
Exactly. But then they do what every mine has to do. They overlay their block model against their mill production report.
Okay, jargon alert. Let's break that down. What's a block model?
Think of it like a 3D treasure map of the ground. It's a grid where geologists have predicted exactly how much gold is in every single cube of rock. That's the prediction.
And the mill production report.
That's reality. That's the scorecard of what they actually crushed, processed, and got out the other end.
So prediction versus reality, the moment of truth.
The moment of truth. And for Dacian, the numbers did not match. They ran a calculation called the mill head grade reconciliation, which the industry calls F3.
F3, okay.
Ideally, you want that number to be 1.0. That means you got exactly what you predicted. Dacian's F3 was 0.85.
0.85. So that means the grade, the actual amount of gold in the rock, was 15% lower than their map said it would be.
15% lower. And that had immediate, and I mean violent, consequences. Their target from their Bankable Feasibility Study was 210,000 ounces of gold.
Right.
Because of that grade drop, they missed that target by over 70,000 ounces.
70,000. That's a shortfall of more than a third. That's massive.
And the market saw that. Within 3 years, operations were suspended. That $300 million we talked about, it was just gone.
Okay, this is the part that I always get stuck on, and I think a lot of people might too. You said the grade dropped 15%.
Yes.
Now, if I'm running a lemonade stand and I sell 15% less lemonade, I make 15% less money. It's not great, but I'm probably not going out of business. Why is a 15% drop fatal for a gold mine?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. And the answer is all about the unforgiving structure of mining economics. It's what I call the leveraged collapse.
Leveraged collapse. Okay, explain that.
Well, think about the costs of running a mine. By the time you're producing gold, your costs are almost entirely fixed.
Right, you've already built the huge processing plant.
Exactly. Hundreds of millions in steel and concrete. You've hired the crew, you've signed the debt agreements with the bank, the lights are on, the crushers are running.
So you're spending that money whether you find a lot of gold or just a little bit.
Precisely. It costs you basically the same to process a ton of rock with 1 gram of gold as it does a ton of rock with 10 grams. So if your revenue drops by 15%, but your costs stay the same.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Your profit doesn't drop by 15%. It can drop by 90%.
Right.
Or it just vanishes completely.
The margin just gets absolutely crushed.
It gets vaporized. And then the cascade effect begins. This is the really dangerous part. When your grade is lower, you have to raise something called your cutoff grade.
The cutoff grade. We hear that term a lot. What does it actually mean on the ground?
It's the simple financial threshold for what's worth digging up. If a piece of rock doesn't have enough gold in it to pay for the cost of mining and processing it, you have to treat it as waste.
Makes sense. Don't spend $10 to find $5 worth of gold.
Exactly. But here's the trap. When your average grade drops, your cost per ounce goes up, so you have to raise that threshold. Suddenly, a whole bunch of rock that you thought was profitable or in your model,
Is now just expensive gravel.
it's now waste, which means your life of mine shrinks. The mine that was supposed to last 10 years might now only last 5, and that's what triggers the financial death spiral.
Because the bank loan was based on the 10-year plan.
The debt was sized for a much richer, longer life mine. Your ability to pay back that loan, your debt service coverage ratio, it just collapses.
So Dacian was fighting a structural deficit from the very first day. The foundation was just broken.
Yes. They built a factory designed for a high-quality raw material that just wasn't there in the quantities they believed.
Which brings us back to the physics of this. The model was wrong. How's that even happen? I mean, geologists are smart people. They have advanced software. They drill holes in the ground. How do you get it so wrong?
It usually comes down to two main culprits, and they're fascinating because they are purely physical phenomena. The first one is called the soft ore problem.
Soft ore. That sounds...
Harmless.
It sounds nice, doesn't it? But it's a total nightmare for geologists. In a lot of gold deposits, the richest parts, the highest grade zones, are often friable.
Friable meaning?
That'd be
Crumbly.
crumbly soft. Now picture a diamond drill. It uses high-pressure water to cool the bit and flesh out the rock cuttings. When that drill hits a pocket of soft, crumbly, high-grade gold,
The water just blasts it away.
it can wash it away completely. It turns into a sludge and disappears into the cracks in the rock. It never makes it into the sample bag.
Oh, wow.
So the geologist on site looks at the solid core they did recover, and they log 90% recovery, which sounds pretty good. But the missing 10% was the stuff with all the gold in it.
But the more common problem, you said, the one that leads to overestimation, is the second culprit.
Right, and that's the nugget effect.
I've heard of this. This is when you just get lucky and hit a literal gold nugget with the drill.
You get lucky, yes. But think about the scale difference. A drill core is tiny. It's maybe 4 centimeters wide, a few kilograms of rock per meter. But when you go to mine, you're dealing with massive blast holes, tons and tons of rock in every scoop.
It's like judging an entire cake based on a single crumb. That's a perfect analogy. The theory on this goes back to the 70s. Sampling error increases exponentially as your sample mass goes down. So, with the nugget effect, your tiny drill hole hits a gold nugget by pure chance.
Jackpot.
Well, the computer model thinks it's a jackpot. It takes that one tiny data point and it extrapolates it across a massive volume of rock. It creates what we call a phantom high-grade zone in the model.
A ghost. But then when you actually go to mine that whole area...
The nugget was a fluke. The rest of the rock is barren. The phantom zone vanishes, and so does your profit.
That is genuinely incredible. A statistical illusion that can bring down a company.
A predictable one if you're not careful.
So how do you diagnose this? How can you tell if the problem is the map or if it's the person driving the truck?
There's a tool for that. It's called the F-factor framework. It's incredibly useful. It breaks the whole process down into 3 different grades.
Okay, lay them out for me.
First, you have the resource model grade. That's the original prediction, the treasure map. Second, you have the ore control grade.
And that's from the blast holes, right? The last check before you dig.
Exactly. It's a much denser grid of data, so that's your checkpoint. And third, you have the millhead grade. That's the final reality of what actually goes into the plant.
Prediction, checkpoint, reality. Got it.
Now you look at the ratios between them. Let's start with F2. F2 is the millhead grade divided by the ore control grade.
So reality versus the checkpoint.
Right. And at Dacian, F2 was 0.98.
98%. That's really good.
It's excellent. It means the mining team was doing a phenomenal job. They were getting almost exactly what the blast holes predicted. In fact, management was highlighting this number. They were saying, look, our mining reconciliation is 98%.
We're doing our part.
And they were, but they were looking at the wrong number. The real story, the fatal flaw, was in F1.
And F1 is?
F1 is the ore control grade divided by the resource model grade, the checkpoint versus the original prediction. At Dacian, F1 was about 0.87.
Oof. So before they even scooped a single rock, the blast holes were already finding 13% less gold than the map said was there.
Bingo. The checkpoint revealed the truth. The original model was wrong. And here's the most important lesson from this whole story. You cannot fix a wrong resource model with better mining.
The ore is what it is.
Exactly. Dacian built a beautiful, efficient mine for an ore body that simply didn't exist.
Which feels like they were doomed from the start. could they have known? I mean, this brings us to the feasibility study, right? The big document that gets you the money.
It does. They had what's called a Bankable Feasibility Study.
Bankable. That word sounds so secure, so final.
It's a myth. It's an optimistic blueprint, not a guarantee. They did all the standard stuff, drilling, metallurgy, but they missed some critical stress tests.
Like what? What did they miss?
For one, they failed to really stress test the financial model against a big grade variance. They never properly asked, what if we're wrong by 15%?
Which is a huge oversight, given that 60% statistic you mentioned earlier.
It is. But they also missed key technical steps. They didn't do enough twin drilling, where you drill a second hole right next to the first one just to see if you get the same result.
To check your own work, basically.
To check your own work. And they didn't use conditional simulation, which is a method that gives you a range of possible outcomes, not just one happy average.
Why would a company skip that? Is it just too expensive?
It costs money, yeah. Doing these checks properly might cost, say, $2 to $5 million and add a few months to the project timeline.
$2 to $5 million.
To protect a $300 million investment.
So they saved maybe $4 million up front, and in doing so, risked the entire company.
That's the brutal math of it.
Yeah.
But we have to understand the psychology. And again, this isn't unique to Dacian. This is an industry-wide pressure. A feasibility study is often a sales document. It's optimized to secure funding, to get the green light from the board and the banks.
You need the loan to build the mine.
And things like twin drilling might find problems. It might show the deposit is more variable than you hoped. That scares investors. So there's this perverse incentive to not look too closely.
That was a terrifying thought. It's like buying a house but deciding not to pay for an inspection because you're worried it might kill the deal.
It's a perfect analogy.
Okay, so let's pivot to solutions. How do we avoid this? If I'm an investor or a developer, what's the path forward?
The path is actually pretty clear. For developers, spend the money. Spend that 0.5% of your capital on validation. Do the twin drilling. It is the cheapest insurance you will ever buy.
Pay the $4 million to save the $300 million. Easy math.
For investors, you need to learn to ask the F1 question. Don't just get dazzled by the projected returns. Ask management. What validation work has been done to confirm this resource estimate?
Ask about F1. I like that. It's a simple question that cuts right to the heart of the biggest risk.
It shows you know where the weak link is. And finally, for executives, treat grade reconciliation as a top-level strategic KPI. It's not a technical footnote for the geology department. It's the literal heartbeat of your business.
And what about those technical fixes, the simulation you mentioned?
Yes, the industry needs to move more towards conditional simulation. Instead of a model that gives one single answer, it gives you probabilities. It says there's a 90% chance of at least this much and a 50% chance of that much.
Which is just more honest about the uncertainty.
And it lets you build a business plan that can survive the lower outcome. If Dacian had built a mine that was profitable at the lower grade, they might still be operating today.
Right, they'd be surviving even if they weren't thriving at the level they'd hoped.
That's risk management 101.
So as we wrap up, the big takeaway is that this wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a freak accident.
Not at all. It was a predictable outcome of the physics of sampling error. When you rely on tiny samples to predict massive volumes, error is inevitable. If you don't plan for that error, you're not investing, you're gambling.
And that bankable study is just an optimistic blueprint.
Nothing more.
You know, that leads to a pretty provocative final thought here. It feels like there's an uncomfortable truth, a dangerous equilibrium in the industry.
There is. And the question you have to ask is, are these studies designed to find the objective truth? Or are they designed to get the bank loan?
Because until you turn the mill on, nobody really knows. It's Schrodinger's mine. The gold is both there and not there at the same time.
Exactly. Unless a company has the courage to spend that extra money up front to challenge its own assumptions. And it takes real courage to spend $5 million on a test that might prove your project isn't as good as you thought it was.
So for everyone listening, whether you're in mining or not, look at your own data, your own models, and ask yourself that hard question. Am I modeling reality? Or am I just modeling what I hope reality will be?
That is the question.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious and definitely double check your models.
See you next time.